Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and this is the Warrior Stream. I'm here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, taking a topic, deep diving, having a good time while doing it. Before we get into today's show, just to get the housekeeping out of the way, number one, if you're not getting my emails every morning, masterchimletter.com. A couple of you guys that are going to be watching today do get it. And I told you moving forward on Wednesdays, I'm going to double dip. So I'm going to be doing the show email, and I'm also going to do another email. And I have one almost prepared for later. I write those every day. Sometimes I take pieces of older emails and I repurpose them for something that's appropriate, for something I want to talk about now or something I got going on. But every day it's a fresh approach to a new topic in the world of Planet MC. Hope that's not too arrogant to say that you're all now in my world. But we got some people on. What's going on here? We got Jamie. What's up, brother, man? How you doing? Good to see you. We got Niles. My man Niles is here. Judge Cohen in the house. Good to see you. And Aaron says, I wasn't sure you're going to do a show today. Good to see you. Good morning for me and afternoon to you. Right on. And of course, I was going to do a show. I was raised Roman Catholic. I am not Roman Catholic. I am not Christian. But I am very much aligned with the values of the European mindset, from which many of the Christian mindsets stem from. So let's not just get into controversy, right? This is Christmas Eve, right, for Christians who are celebrating, and I don't want to start pissing people off. We just fucking started, right? Aaron, you know how I get. Will you stop bringing shit like that up? My man Cap, good to see you, brother, man. Hope you're well. Judge Cologne says the pressure never stops. You're damn right. You are damn right. So I do have some stuff to talk about. If you're not, like I said, if you're not getting my emails, masterchimletter.com, make sure you're getting it. Who else we got here? My man Cassettas, what's going on, brother, man? Good to see you. All right. And what else? There's a bunch of other links in the description. If you guys haven't taken my assessment yet, the leadership alignment assessment, so much of my philosophy and the systems and models that I teach in my coaching programs are built around this concept, or this metric really, of alignment. And it starts with the 3 roads sort of framework of self, tribe, and value, and the alignment, having some priority in who you are, and then building alliances that are connected to that, and then finding ways for you and your people to create value that mutually benefit you and others, even those outside your tribe. I think a lot of, if not the majority, and maybe even all of the problems facing today's men stem from a lack of alignment. So you could do yourself a favor by just taking the assessment. It's free. The link's in the description. It takes about 3 minutes. You get your own personal report sent to you via email. And I don't spam you or anything like that. Like, I'm just going to send you some information that will benefit you. So who else we got going on? Jan Saxon, what's up, Don? Good to see you. All right. And Lexin says, can you say, I can't read what he's saying there. Magoo Speaks in the house. Magoo, you fuck. I'm glad you're here. It's been a while. Magoo's one of my students in the Bronx. I don't typically curse at everybody. All right. Okay, so let's get it. So today we're going to be talking about men's infamous struggle with accountability. First off, again, with me just having the inability to stay on mission, I want to talk about how cool the thumbnail was today. So I created that actually for an event I have coming up. And I decided to repurpose it and sort of find a way to fit it into the show today, and I did. I'm having way too much fun with AI than I should be. But I leverage it. I teach it to my guys. I don't think I play like technologically ignorant on the internet. Like I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, I don't know how email works. I just like no, I know all this shit works, right? So I'm doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, just finding ways not only for me to be more productive, but for the guys that I connect with through my coaching programs. And you guys benefit too. There's plenty of times I'm shouting you guys out with some tips and insights from my experiences that you're going to be able to apply to your life in some way, in some valuable way. But today, the accountability issue really stems from, I guess, and I have a list, of course, right? The 7 ways men struggle with accountability. I got my notes, everything. It's raring to go. But before we get into the officially prepared material, the big thing with men today is they're soft. And why are they soft? Because they can be, right? And that is an insight that people, I don't know if they avoid it, they just maybe they disagree with it, but it's absolutely true. If you disagree with it, I would agree with you, but then we both be wrong. That's a phrase one of my guys used to use with me. But the idea of it is, nowhere in history have you found a time where men could continue to be productive at the same level while leveraging the structure of technology and civilization more effectively so that their effort decreases in the process. So what do I mean by that? I've used this example before, but I'm just going to put it out there. If you are required as a man to put out 10 units of productivity a day, right? Just go with it. 10 units of productivity. And you every day get up and you bust your ass to create those 10 units of productivity. And then some sort of tool comes out. And this tool, the tool could be a computer program, a actual tool, a physical tool. It could be a access to a process, and this discovery, scientific discovery, whatever it is, some mechanism comes out where instead of putting 10 units of effort to create 10 units of productivity, this tool, just by using it, gives you 10 units of productivity. So you got to work hard to get 10. Now this tool comes out and it gives you 5. There is a spectrum of men that describes what they will do when in this situation. Some men, used to working hard, 10 units of effort for 10 units of productivity, 10 in to get 10 out. They see this tool and the tool gives them 5. So they're going to keep putting 10 in, but now they're going to use the tool and they're going to get 15 out. But then they're on the other side of the spectrum, the other bookend, the bottom end of the bookends, is the man that says, if I have to put 10 in to get 10 out and this tool gives me 5, I now only have to put 5 in, because then the tool will put in 5 and I'll still have 10. Because of the power of technology and civilization and all of the structures and mechanisms that modern times provide men, we, for the first time, I'd say at the highest level, and I'd say it's going to keep going in this direction, more men are opting to put out 5 instead of maintaining the 10 so they could put out 15. Men are lazy, men are soft, men are pussies today because they can get away with it, because they can. The consequences aren't as severe as they have been in the past. So that is the sort of the ecosystem, the background, the environment, in which men are operating these days. So what makes a man want to continue to strive to put 10 in, even though he's got a tool that'll give him 5? Who's the man that keeps putting 10 in? It's the man that has a philosophy, standards, a mindset of one day being able to put out 11 and then 12 and then 13. He'll use the tools because the tools will create more of an output, but he wants to be more capable in the process. The foundational, statement of my philosophy is pressure to power. The meta model that I created is the pressure to power meta model. Without pressure, there's no power. Now, there's all these frameworks and sort of submodels within that to describe how this actually works in the real world in a way that's replicatable, and we could use it as a diagnostic and improve upon people's efforts to create better outcomes. All that, yeah. But if you have an aversion to pressure, you are never going to be a crusher. And understand, if you have that same aversion to pressure, you're always going to be reliant upon society taking care of you in some way. And it doesn't mean welfare. It doesn't mean you're going to have a fucking EBT card necessarily. You could be. But it's really this idea of you're going to be safe as long as you're in the bubble, right? As long as you're in the aquarium, as long as you're in the matrix, whatever label you want to use for the artificial reality that you're benefiting from. If you don't have something internally driven to have you become more capable, your environment is never going to force you to do it. Now, the problem with that is, we have this conversation with most men today, and they're like, well, who gives a shit? I just want to take my family to Disneyland. I want to have my, my rectangular house on my rectangular, little lot next to my rectangular neighbors. And I want to have my 2.6 kids, whatever it is. I think it's less than that now. I guys ain't having enough kids, but they're like, okay with it. And they don't, they're like, well, listen, MC, the burden of proof is on you. I'm having fun every day. And my wife and I are laughing every day, And there's a point where it's like, yeah, you're right. I can't make you want to be more. I can only equip the people that want to be more with the tools to do so. But society itself is no longer pressuring people to want to be more because they don't need to be, right? So today we're going to talk about the ways that men avoid accountability. I went into that whole little piece just now because I wanted to sort of set the stage for the reality that men are operating in. But now I want to talk about the actual technical things that are occurring, the technical approaches or tactics that men are using to avoid accountability, right? So I did do a little bit of work, right? And we're going to start. I have 7 ways that men struggle with accountability. And we're going to just go 1 through 7. I didn't put them in any order of significance. I actually had a list of about 15, I think, and I just chopped it down, combined a couple, but 7 is where we're at. So let's get it popping. So number 1, we have refusing to look inward. Men today, they're conditioned to look at any self-examination, any introspection as weakness. They think that, the guy because this is what you get, because I get a lot of the guys who, we're seeing this politically now, and I'm not getting into politics in this show because I want to keep it on mission. But we're seeing a lot of guys that consider themselves masculine, traditionally so, where, it's me, my wife, my children, the man works, the wife, is taking care of the kids, whatever the case is. But then they have this sort of superficial understanding of what that's supposed to be. Masculinity, traditional masculinity, if I'm going to co-opt the term for a second, means functional, first and foremost. It's the masculinity that works. It's the way that a man acts that produces, in large numbers, the best outcomes. That's what traditional masculinity is. It is the role and the behaviors, rituals, routines, what have you, tendencies that produce the best outcomes. Large numbers, being considered, of course. Men today, they've reduced it to this superficial bravado. You get the guy with the that's on the sauce, and he's got the sport team shirt, and he does all the things that the commercials tell him a man's supposed to do. He drives his truck in mud, and he barbecues ribs, and he does all the things that you're supposed to do. The commercials they'll tell you how to be a man. This is what you buy. This is what you do. But they've never really taught themselves how to do this by having a process whereby they audit what it is that they've done and the outcomes they've gotten as a result. Without self-examination, a man's identity stays untested, right? There's no feedback loop there. And if it's untested, then the man's vision never really has the opportunity to emerge, right? And not to get too much into the meta model stuff, but you want to have a goal, right? And the goal, like achieving the goal, is less important as the clarity of having one gives you insofar as what you're supposed to do every single day. Well, the guy that doesn't even look inside and sort of, again, audit who he is and what he's trying to do and how it's working out, he never really does this work. There's a tension that is born when a man sees a goal and he's saying, I want that. I want to be that person, that future me. I want to be that person. And there's a pull, a tension. That tension eventually becomes the willpower he's using to make it happen. But if he doesn't have that introspective process, how is he ever going to grow and cultivate this willpower? That just doesn't happen. He spends his whole life fitting in and following orders, and just getting the accolades he thinks come from his accomplishment or his status, but it's really just a sugary type of reward one gets for compliance, right? So completely different mindset. So number one, refusing to look inward. So the second way that a man struggles with accountability, bam, the external locus of control. External locus of control. So the locus of control is basically how one assigns the causal force. Who is the one doing this? Who's the one in control? The man who has an external locus of control, he blames things like luck, timing, opportunity. He creates some narrative and says, oh, well, this always happens to me. I'm like, what? Always? You know what that word means? And he creates the case against his own better outcome. Certainly a case against his own ability to get shit done, right? His own power, his own self-power. When somebody does this, they're rejecting their own willpower. When somebody blames the outside world for this or that, or the system, the man, however you want to frame it, it's all the same shit. It's all the same weak shit. It rejects will itself, that willpower itself. The man takes willpower and what that represents, and he gives it to the external sources. He's saying, this is what has the power. It's not me. It's this thing that has the power. And the narrative that reinforces that prevents the man from ever learning how to cultivate his own power to begin with. If everybody else is in control of your life, what is the motivation to fucking do anything about it? It's like sitting in the back of a bus and complaining about where the bus is going. You can complain all day, but you're not the bus driver in your mind. So eventually you just see the futility in complaining and you just do what you're going to do. And when a man has an external locus of control, these are the things that wind up happening as a result. So number two, external locus of control. I have one of those. I bought this thing. I don't know, any tech nerds there. I bought an A10 Mini, right? So I don't have to keep moving shit to find buttons. And it's been here for 3 weeks. I guess I'll put it like right in front of my desk so it becomes more inconvenient and I do it. But this is a pain in the ass, so I'm always looking for buttons. This is my point. I'm basically venting. You guys know I'm not getting fucking paid for this. I could do what I want. All right. So that was number 2. Comments. What do we got here? Cap says, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you do about it. Right on. Right on. You got that right. So let's get to number 3. The number 3 way that men struggle with accountability: protecting the ego at all costs. So what does this look like? It looks like deflection, denial, being defensive, admitting that fault feels like destruction to the person. It's like if I claim that, or if I admit and acknowledge that I'm wrong, I'm going to lose my very identity. If I'm not always right, who am I? Do I even have an identity? This is the problem when a man protects his ego at all costs. He thinks it's something that empowers him. He thinks it's something that makes him capable, that puts him over the edge of capability. But what winds up happening in practice, and it's observable, in men that do this, their ego becomes a prison. The ego isn't something that allows them to create. It isn't something that allows them to transcend, to overcome. It's not this platform of power. It's this prison. And as they designed this ego, years ago, I made a program called The Mind Killers. And it's about different biases that men have. And one of them was the vacuum cleaner. And the vacuum cleaner is the person who creates this small little box to live in. Not literally, right? His world becomes a small little box, and he keeps everything in it perfectly. And I named it the vacuum cleaner to equate it to somebody who's obsessed with vacuuming all day long. As if like dust and lint and what have you getting on the floor is not supposed to happen. And what winds up happening is because their ego is so fragile, these men, they keep shrinking their life smaller and smaller and smaller until it gets to a size that they can lie to themselves that it's perfect. If they live a life that's too big beyond their control, they can't say they don't have complete control, and they'd have to find a way to mitigate that ego issue. They don't want to do that. They can't do that. They might not even understand that they should do that. So they wind up leading a small life as a result. All right. So number 3, they protect their ego at all costs. Magoo says not getting paid yet. I'm working on it. Good luck. Aaron says, I only lost because, yes, it's these people that, well, obviously you always win and you're perfect and you have no problems and you never made a mistake. So obviously it's something else, right? And we all know so many people like that. Some of us might even be like that from time to time, right? Certainly not anybody that's watching my stuff, because you guys got your shit squared away. All right. So the number 4 way that men struggle with accountability. We're going up to 7. We're on number 4. Let's get it. Number 4, the victim mentality trap. This is bad things always happen to me. How come I can't ever do it? How come this always happens? How come it never works out? I have the worst luck. They have all these stories about why they're not supposed to be a man, right? Like why they're not supposed to be held accountable, I guess, more to the point of today's talk, why they're not supposed to be held accountable for their outcomes. The problem with, being a victim too, and you guys see this is running rampant in society today, is there's also the benefits you get from being a victim today. Throughout history, that was not the case, right? Throughout history, that was not the case. But nowadays, you could suffer from something. You could be oppressed. You could have somebody out to get you. You could have some narrative that makes you a victim. And suddenly you get status. Suddenly you are given value. You are invested in by other people. Because along with your dysfunctional drive towards self-power, people also concurrently have this dysfunctional level of empathy. Somehow in society, compassion became like the currency that's being traded, and somehow everybody expects to be, more productive and plentiful as a result of it. And that's just not the way the physics work, right, in this world. So when you have somebody that's walking around with that victim mentality, it's like, yeah, what's happening to them? They're getting attention. They're getting sympathy from other people. They're not connected to any responsibility for their outcomes. Whatever they do, it's like, oh, well, it's if it wasn't for these people, like I'd be able to, and whatever the story is, and listen, also to worth bringing up, I've mentioned this before. There is nothing that I talk about that I probably haven't done terribly at some point in my life. So just for the record, I don't absolve myself of any of this stuff. I've succumbed to all of this, at some point in the past. I didn't even pay attention to politics until I was 23. No, 25, 33 years old. 2008. It's the first presidential election I paid attention to. And I voted for Obama. That's what a fucking idiot I was back then. So all of these things, like I was somebody, my mother used to have a phrase for me growing up. You guys may have heard it before. Strong and wrong. Strong and wrong. I was so committed to bad positions, but I had power. And so I was able to defend them. I was able to, I had confidence, I had attitude, I had energy, I could debate, I knew how to argue, but I just didn't have the exposure to a level of accountability that would have righted my ship a long time ago. Certainly a lot sooner than it eventually was. And ego was a big part of it. But the other part of it was I bought into the New York City, educational system mindset of everybody's out to get us. Everything's, conspiring against me. That was the sentiment that was put out in school systems growing up in New York, in the Bronx. And I bought into it because I never saw anything in my environment that contradicted it. Everybody else was saying the same thing. So like I understand how these things happen. So the reason I bring this up right now is I don't mean this to be some sort of sermon from up above where I'm just telling all the little people how they're supposed to be acting. It's like, I'm standing right there with you because I went through this shit myself, and listen, I'm still not perfect. There's still times where I'm ready to break somebody's jaw, and it's like I allow myself to relax, and it's like I'm throwing a fucking 50-year-old tantrum. It's like, all right, maybe I should square my shit away and relax. So this is certainly something that I'm susceptible to myself, right? So got some comments here. Jamie says, we all have an ego. Well, it's true. It's true. Make sure to throw the formula over here. I need some money too. I got you, Magoo. Jamie says, I've been told that some people, not saying who, molest children because of something a white person did 50 years ago. Completely degenerate. Yeah. Well, you know what? Making it a more general observation to make sure this video stays on YouTube. That is the thing, with pedophiles. I don't know if you know, but he was also molested as a child. Okay. What's my opinion on what should happen to pedophiles? It's like, yeah, they should learn to fly. They should learn to fly. Just say it that way. But they were molested, it's like, okay, I get it. Tragic, I guess. Write the story. Everybody will cry. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. The guy's still got to learn how to fly. That's just the way it is. Because I believe in a very practical approach to how to create and enable the most powerful future for the individual and for his people. And obviously scaling up from there. But this idea of somehow what I consider to be a misjustice that happened a long time ago absolves me of my actions now. Yeah, that shit don't work. That does not work. Right? Magoo says, in my life before going on this walk towards manhood, people treated me better when I cried the victim. Why do they hate that I want to be accountable for myself? Because you become the mirror that none of them want to peer into. Every time a man holds standards in front of men who do not, he becomes the mirror that none of them want to see. And just think about the level of difficulty. If you're talking about somebody who's not accountable for their actions, they're obviously not going to pick the hardest path. They're always looking for the easiest way. And what's easy or what's easier? Looking at a mirror and seeing your deficiencies and fixing them, or just turning away from the mirror, or just throwing a rock at the mirror, right? This thing tends to explain itself after a while, right? Jamie says, who suffer when people consent to that narrative? Children. Many people have been molested who didn't go on to become molesters, like selling crack. That is an individual choice for which the individual needs to be held accountable. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know? Niles says, yes, we can. I don't know what that's a reference to, but I'm with you, Niles. All right. So number 4 was the victim trap mentality. Let's get to number 5. Number 5, confusing effort with accountability. Confusing effort with accountability. Now, I've spoken about this a bunch in these last couple of weeks. It's one of these, I think it was a point that I made on one of my mastermind calls, and it just became top of mind, and I found a utility for it, in subsequent conversations. But the man who wants to work hard and then that effort somehow entitling him to some outcome is disconnected from the causal relationship of how outcomes are created. Everything that we do externally is that's well, you could argue that all of this qualifies, but anything that we do in the form of effort or work to create an outcome always considers other elements. There are other variables, other elements involved in creating that outcome. So you do your part, but your part is really only a piece of the pie of what is necessary to create the outcome. There is a point where, very much like children who don't understand the nuance involved in that, feel that an outcome is somehow owed to them because of the suffering that they feel that they've invested in acquiring said outcome. I've gone, if anybody's ever gone fishing, I've gone fishing many times with my pops growing up. And I admittedly was somebody who did not have a lot of patience. I'm somebody who would sit there. My brother, much better fisherman than I am, because he had the patience to actually learn how to fish. I used to show up to the fishing trips with my father looking to fight fish all day. It's like, well, where the fuck are they? Let's get after them. And it's like, well, you gotta, especially throwing your bottom fish in the middle of the fucking sea. It's like, all right, you gotta say, you wait for a bite. Now I get it, like I'm not a retarded fisherman. I know how to catch a fucking fish, but admittedly, I'd much rather be the guy who was who used to go jigging for bluefish, where you would just long cast the jig out, let it hit, and just start cranking it. And eventually a bluefish would just smack that motherfucker. And it was like, then you're fighting this. It was the greatest thing in the world. But any minute that I wasn't doing that, I felt like I was pissed off. Like, where the fuck are these fish? I got up early. My father paid. It's not like I paid or anything. Probably would have been worse if I did it as an adult. But there was this mindset that, look at all this stuff that I did. How come the fish aren't participating in this? Or I would look to blame the captain. How come you didn't tell the fish we were coming? Or whatever the case was. But just a disconnect from the way the universe works. And modern men, again, much like children, this is a tactic that they use. I tried becomes the battle cry against the results. Like, how come you didn't do your chores? Well, I tried. It just, it just took longer than it was. It's like, well, either you fucking do it or you don't. Effort becomes their excuse. It becomes their sort of trump card. And a lot of men these days This is exactly how they deal with criticism for their lack of accomplishment or their lack of follow through. You know, they've written checks themselves saying they're going to do certain things and they don't do it, but suddenly it's everybody else's fault because nobody else understands just how hard they work to try and get it. Right. So, number 5, confusing effort with accountability. Let's get to number 6. We got 2 more. There's 7 total. So, number 6, we have avoiding friction instead of engaging it. This is one that I've been talking about a lot lately. A lot of men today will choose comfort over confrontation with resistance. They have this sort of conflict aversion. Comfort feels so good. It feels so good, and it has become, I'll say the men behind the curtain have successfully convinced everybody that being comfortable is the ideal goal of life. To be comfortable, to have the comfortable couch and listen to the comfortable music on the comfortable speakers and eat the comfort food, and you're really succeeding when you no longer have to engage resistance. They believe it. They design their lives around it. And at some point, they start suffering the consequences of it. What happens with, earlier I was talking about willpower. Well, when you avoid friction, your willpower has nothing to engage. You don't know if you're doing the thing. It's almost like being in water you can't feel. How do you know if you're even swimming? And if you don't know if you're swimming, how do you build up your swimming muscles without the feedback that the friction of the water provides? There's a relationship there. But if there's no friction, where's your willpower supposed to go? It winds up dissipating and disappearing. Well, somebody who thinks the pinnacle of existence is the acquisition of comfort, they'll never reach any area that they're satisfied with, because the weaker you become, the harder it is to generate the comfort that you seek. I'm of the mindset that I treat comfort like a mile marker on a path. It's like, oh, there's that thing. I'm almost there. We're almost at the point where we're going to feel comfortable. Oh, man, this is great. We're here. That's great. All right, let's keep it moving. Yeah, remember that comfort? Yeah, that was awesome. It's just something that you pass. But people that have this end stage mindset of this utopia, what is the motivation to forge yourself into being the most powerful person you could be from day to day, if everything is about this utopia that you'll reach? If you say, I want to be the most powerful version of me, it's like full stop. That's the end of the sentiment. You don't have to talk about, because then I'll get this and then I'll get that. And that winds up, putting you in this sort of false orientation of, I have to become more comfortable. I have to become super strong so one day I won't need strength. This paradoxical nonsense. It's like, no. Why should you become more powerful? Because you can. Yeah, but that's not a good enough reason. Well, I think you're maybe the standards of your reasons maybe are too high. Like, you can. That's why you should. That's it. Unless you can't. Unless you won't. Ultimately, I don't give a fuck what you do. But if you're talking about somebody who thinks the way to succeed in life is to avoid friction and be comfortable, I would say the history of mankind disagrees with you. Because I don't think we'd have the society we benefit from today if all of our ancestors just tried to work so hard that they reached a point where they didn't have to work anymore. That just wasn't the mindset, wasn't the mentality. Why? Because the structures weren't strong enough back then to let them get away with it. Whereas today they are. Right? I always talk about America, the land of the fat, poor people. Talk about a fucking paradox. I have no money, therefore I eat 4 times the amount of calories every day I'm supposed to. Like, how the fuck does that happen? All right. So let's go through the list so far. We started off today, and these are the 7 ways that men struggle with accountability. Number 1, refusing to look inward. Number 2, external locus of control. Number 3, protecting the ego at all costs. Number 4, the victim mentality trap. Number 5, confusing effort with accountability. Number 6, avoiding friction instead of engaging it. And now let's get to the last, the number 7 way that men struggle with accountability: refusing consequence as feedback. Refusing consequence as feedback. So there's a point where when somebody doesn't succeed, as kids, the coaches try to tell you, there's no such thing as losing. It's winning or learning. It's like, no, there's winning or losing, and you will fucking lose. I think a more productive way to put it is there's actually a lot of information and learning to be had from losing. But we need to just get the stigma away from it. I think sometimes when people suffer in their consequence, they want to sort of broad brush the consequence as being entirely negative or an enemy of who they are and what they're trying to do. And I just don't think that if we actually inventory all the lessons that we've learned throughout life, we'd see that all of them arguably came through some form of consequence. But when we internalized those lessons, we didn't look at it as something to be, admonished or discarded. It was something to be leveraged. It was information. It was feedback. And we would take that consequence and we would find a way to become stronger, learning from the lesson that it offered us. In the meta model, I talk about the 2 different types of power. There's self-power and there's real power. And real power is making the world respond. Real power is, engaging your mission in a way that the friction you're engaging makes you more capable. And as a result of that greater capability, the world responds to your efforts more significantly. That doesn't happen if we're not paying attention to the exchange of when I do this, this happens. Real power expands your identity because consequences forces who you are and your efforts to update, to upgrade themselves. If I'm trying to get something done and I'm yet not good enough to do it, I have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and figure out how to get it done. Well, that process of updating who I am to be able to overcome adversity that the lesser version of me couldn't get through, that is the value of the feedback. That is the value of the consequence. If you refuse consequence, you almost disconnect and lock yourself out of the growth process completely. How are you supposed to get stronger if you're not paying attention to how to build the strength you need? You go to lift weights because you want big muscles and you want to be really strong, but you're not paying attention to how much weight is on the bar. You're not paying attention to what feels light, what feels heavy. You're not holding yourself accountable to some sort of progression where you could see, because you're paying attention, how the heavier weights are being added over time. If there's no struggle and the perception and understanding of struggle, how could there be the leveraging and the internalizing of the lessons that struggle provides? There are too many people that are walking around so fragile that they can't even admit that they made a mistake, let alone do the work necessary to leverage the consequences into power that they can now wield moving forward. It's almost like they're too weak to learn. They're too weak to learn, right? Comments, what we got here? Cap says, comfort is the opiate for the masses. That's right. Aaron writes, I think this one fits. When living someone else's mission, all the accolades in the world can't save you from yourself. And I will say that when you live somebody else's mission, you're pursuing their vision. Well, their vision was determined, it was designed with them in mind. If, let's just say that you have an individual who loves, I don't know, wild blueberries, and you hate wild blueberries. I mean, wild blueberries, just blueberries, right? I guess there's the artificial, but fucking wild. Anyway, we can say wild blueberries, right? Because I think of meadows and fields, and it sounds good. You hate wild blueberries, they love it. And they tell you, listen, I got this map. You follow this map, you're going to get to this place, and you're going to find this treat, this delicacy. It'll be on the bushes. I want you to pull them off and taste them. It's the most amazing thing ever. But maybe the guy doesn't know they're called wild blueberries. You know you hate wild blueberries, but he's telling you this thing is amazing. If he told you it was wild blueberries, you go, I fucking hate wild blueberries. But you didn't do that. You were so enamored by his sharing of his mission that you were like, you know what, I'm going to go and do it. And you struggle, you push, you get there, and then you're like, fucking blueberries. I did all this for fucking blueberry. Well, that is somebody else's mission. And what winds up happening is there's no fulfillment. There's no tension. There's no lesson to be learned. There's no future version of you. Dedicating your life to achieving somebody else's mission does nothing but add contempt for who you are. Because every single time you struggle, you wind up unfulfilled. You wind up moving in a direction that does not make you any stronger. Right? Magoo writes, LMAO, avoiding friction. Hell no, you got to stroke the walls of life sometime. This should be number one. MC, am I crazy for challenging myself? You know the answer to that, motherfucker. That's the only way to be. Jamie writes, friction starts when the newborn cries. Oh, ain't that the fucking truth? Ain't that the truth? Magoo says, my brother was too weak to learn. Shit is crazy for real, right? And I know he passed. So that's as real as a life lesson gets, real world consequences. All right. So, all right, guys. So we went through the list. I put down what I wanted to. Hopefully you guys picked it up in the process. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I enjoy doing these little talks on Wednesday. I'll be here next week. And again, those of you guys that aren't getting my email, masterchimletter.com, take the assessment. The link's in the description. It's free. I want to see you guys taking it. I want you guys to give me feedback on the results. I found it to be very insightful, but I know I'm biased. So let me tell you that a lot of other people told me they found it to be very valuable and insightful as well. So we'll end it there. I appreciate you guys. Enjoy your holidays and happy Christmas to all you guys that celebrate it. The rest of you guys, I'll be here next week. I appreciate you. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.